How many of you felt a little bit of resent from eroding some of your freedom at any point in your life? I mean, just think about when you were a kid and your dad or your mom said, don't do that, and you threw a tantrum, right? And that's because it's a human need in both of these things. And so an evolutionary relationship has these, not as an either or, but as a both and, right? And as a both and, you can have a relationship that's evolutionary. Now, Bryan and I, the way we relate is that we won't engage in any activity, I mean, this is important, any activity that supports our devotion but erodes our freedom. Nor will we engage in any activity that supports our freedom but erodes our devotion. And so in that sense, we are both and. And so if we are at a stalemate, we know that we are going to find the solution that has us not compromise on those two things, because those are primary for all humans.
I remember when we first decided that. We're on the phone, I'm in my living room, and we're like, this doesn't make sense. How, we can't give up on either one of these. That makes no sense. So let's do this where we're just going to commit to not do anything that erodes either one. And in that moment on the phone, honestly, I didn't think there was going to be anything in the overlap. I was like, well, we're going to sit look at each other, and I was like, I wouldn't even, how do we even choose a restaurant to go to dinner at? I couldn't. It felt like a void in the overlap. I could think of lots of ways that I could express freedom that would diminish devotion only a little bit, tolerable amount. Lots of ways that you could express devotion that would be oppressively destructive to my freedom. But that overlap, I just didn't find anything there. And so when we committed to it in the face of really the unknown. And that's important. Choosing this isn't choosing a known thing that you can like and know that you're going to have. It's choosing to bring creativity to the unknown, to create something where there used to be nothing. And this is important because at the highest level of consciousness, there's only one thing, right? There's only one this. There's only one isness. And there are no paradoxes in one. There is no conflict in one. There's no one thing and not the other thing if there's one. So as you get, and as you raise your consciousness up to that higher plane, more and more things that appear like they're in conflict resolve themselves to be the same thing. And creativity is our communication channel with our higher self. Creativity is the only reliable way, well, not only, my preferable reliable way to literally raise your consciousness. So the way to access creativity is go to a place where there's nothing, there's no answers, and then just be willing to sit there until things kind of show up. And say, there's going to be something in this space, and I'm going to wait until I receive it. So we just started to relate, okay, well, we're going to go to a party. How are we going to be? And you'll be the guardian of devotion, I'll be the guardian of freedom, and we're not going to do anything that both of us aren't a hell yes to.
Yeah. And in doing that, we also committed to something else, which might be a little edgy, but I think is part of why our relationship has been so beautiful and epic and a model for so many people, which is that we committed not only to only engage in activities that support a both and, not an either or, to these human values, so that there wasn't a compromise, but we committed to expand that playing field every moment that we could. So, if there's at first only a small overlap of what would have freedom and devotion be expressed, the next day, the next moment, the next year, the next month, there would be an expansion of the range. How much of his desire for freedom can I hold? How much devotion can I give him, and can he give me, such that it's unassailable? Right? And how can we expand that infinitely in all directions rather than compromising, which is a contraction of here you could do less and less and less and less. You can see that's not evolutionary. After a while, unless you're a saint, that's going to bring up conflict. And so that, if you walk away with one point from this talk, walk away with a both and relationship and kind of look at it for yourselves, or where are you compromising and where could you have a both and engage more creativity. right? So there is no need for the compromise. It's actually looking for where both are served. And that's one of the kind of precepts of our relating.
So it started out as a solution to a problem we couldn't figure out, but then something extraordinary happened. Because of this commitment to continually expanding that middle ground, over the last 7-8 years, I've come to the knowing, and I don't mean realization or thinking, but I mean knowing on the level of my automatic behavior is consistent with that belief set. Right? That's how you know something, is when you forgot about it but you still do it. I came to a knowing that my freedom and our devotion are prior to any decision or action or behavior or conditions. They're actually not. They're not damageable. You can't take away those things. They exist prior to anything that we might do or say or can happen or any configuration or any. They just are. And in that realization, by through this commitment, through that, I have evolved to be the human that doesn't need to assert my freedom because it is, and I don't need to prove my devotion because it is. I don't need her to show me love because it is. And boy, is that relaxing. Now I can forget about that stuff and get on to playing music and working on stuff and building this. Yeah. So that's a way that I've evolved through this evolutionary partnership. Totally unexpected. Didn't see that one coming.
Yeah, I just want to get a sense in this room, and there might be a bias in the room given that we're a Burning Man. How many of you, if you're on the spectrum of more the devotion kind of types or more the freedom-oriented types, how many of you are on the spectrum of totally devotional? When you're in a relationship, you're the one that holds devotion. Let me see. Yeah. It's good. Now, how many of you in the relationship tend to be kind of fighting for more autonomy and freedom and wildness? Yeah.
Okay, now if you're single and you're raising your hand now, hook up with someone who was raising their hand before.
Yeah.
Awesome.
We're going to do matchmaking. You didn't know it, but you'll leave here with your evolutionary partner. That's no extra charge.
So I wanted to say one thing about we talked about the tool of compromise. But what about the actual rule of that the most important rule not to break is to stay in the partnership? What's more important than staying in the partnership? And she already ruled out comfort, and she already ruled out pleasure, which really means evolutionary growth, and not just generally speaking, but there's a way to prioritize a specific evolutionary path for you.
Yeah, so we think of it like I think most of us think of it when we enter a relationship, we commit to each other, right? I'm committed to be with you every moment, remember? So we commit to one another. And then so it's we each are a pole in the relationship. So there's me, there's him, and we're wrapping each other, circling each other in our commitment and in our devotion. And in an evolutionary relationship, Bryan and I like to think of something that we call the third pole. Right? Because in a fight, if I want it my way and he wants it his way, I want it my way. I want it my way, right? It's hard.
Exactly how I talk in a fight, by the way.
I want it my way.
Right now.
I want it my way. Oh, we all have that little voice. I want it my way. Why won't we do it my way? Anyway, so you see that it's hard to find your way out of that. If the commitment is to each other, and then wait a minute, what he wants is not what I want, and if it even isn't in the realm of freedom and devotion, we can't figure this both and. How do we evolve our way out of that mess? And a distinction that Bryan and I came up with early on in our relationship, that we're actually going to have you do it here right now with us, which I'm excited about having you do it, is this third idea of this third pole. So if there's two of us in a pole, this third pole is what I would call the very context for your relationship, that you are actually both serving that context. And this may be a little scandalous to say, but it's almost more, you're almost more committed to the context of your relating, to the purpose of your relating, than to each other. Not by a lot, just by the smallest amount, enough to pull you up and spiral you out of that deadlock of compromise and de-evolution. And so that context for relating is the thing that is the answer to the question, why am I in this relationship? What is this relationship about for me? Why am I in it? right? And we mentioned like comfort and pleasure, but every one of you has a context for the way that you relate that we want to help you unearth. Some of you may already know yours. Some of you might, in being asked this question, might kind of pull it out of you, but it's in there. And, these are going to be versions of things that are the most inspiring qualities that you bring or want to bring at your best to every relationship you're in. Right? When you think about who at my best, what do I want to bring to every relationship, not just your romantic ones, but every single relationship. And that is your context for relating. And when you can share a context for relating, when those are 100% the same, him and I have a shared context for relating, then it's really clear to us, and we'll give you maybe a couple stories, which thing, when we're in a compromise of who wants it whose way, which thing would be the more evolutionary track.
It's cool too because it allows you to break all the rules we were talking about, like hurt your partner or please your partner. If I am in a situation where Jennifer might be hurt, but it's going to serve our context, it's clear to me what we're going to do, and then she experiences her hurt, but she also gets that I'm doing it for the context, which is the same thing that she's committed to. So there's no conflict there. She's hurt, and I don't like that, and I want to console her, but we're still shoulder to shoulder working towards our context.
Yeah. So some examples of context, just to kind of, because this may be a little abstract as we're talking about it. So like, for instance, Bryan and I had a context for relating that was about leading an extraordinary life. And we defined that extraordinary life by a set of 5 values, which were transcendence or evolution, freedom, devotion, community, and contribution. Right? And those values were primary in our lives. And it was clear when we were having a kind of a fight over whose way was whose way, which was the more extraordinary way of being. Even if it wasn't my preference. I was willing to give up my preference in service to the context. And that's why our fights aren't the who gets whose way compromise fight. It's the let's talk about what's more evolutionary, let's talk about what would be more extraordinary. And if you'll use this in your way of relating, the quality of dialogue you have when you're in conflict, because we are believers of having the conflict, we're not conflict avoidant, that context that you develop that's going to have your signature on it will be the thing that pulls you out and up into that spiral of evolution. So let's throw out a few more examples.
Well,
or you want to say something? Tell the story.
So I come from the tribe of sorry sayers. Sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, wow. I heard saying. Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Did anyone else from my tribe of sorry sayers? Okay. Awesome. Jennifer doesn't come from the tribe of sorry sayers. That's not where she came from. And so we're, early on in the relationship and whatever, we had a little tiff, we had a little this or a little that, and she maybe used some strong language, and then the tiff is over and I'm kind of waiting for the, sorry I said this word or whatever. And so I said, hey, Jennifer, I'd really like it if you would say you're sorry. In fact, as I'm noticing, I'd really like it if you'd say you're sorry more often. Let's just be real. And then she immediately said, okay.
It seemed reasonable, like, I should totally do more of that. I want to be the good girl in a relationship.
I'm going to go in that direction. She started to, in that moment, shapeshift, because that's one of her geniuses, to the kind of sorry sayer tribe type. And I noticed something unpleasant, which is that's felt like a devolution. It felt like I just had the thought, wait a minute, if we're in this for longevity, we're going to compound each one of these decisions by days and weeks and months and years and decades. So if she's on a decade-long iteration of saying sorry more often, like what future, who does she become? And is it a more extraordinary, because that's our context at the time, to live an extraordinary life, is it more extraordinary to say you're sorry more often? Or is it more extraordinary to be aware of your behavior such that you're accountable for it and saying sorry less often? In fact, strive to never say you're sorry. And even though my preference was aching for, I so wanted that little validation of you did the bad thing, you have to say you're sorry. That way I can feel better. That when I do the bad thing, that I'm okay. I wanted all that. Not even playfully I wanted it. And I could see that it wasn't evolutionary. So I said, okay, well, wait a minute. we need to stop this because it's clearly more extraordinary. How about instead of you doing that, I'm going to strive to be more accountable for my behavior in the moment, and when I say sorry, I'm going to do a better job of wiring that regret or faux regret backwards into my behavior to change it in the first place. And so that's an example of how the context trumps the preference, and we're no longer compromising.
Yeah, there's a way for me energetically, and this is subtle, and some of you might be wincing, going, oh, this sounds like a really bad idea. Any of you kind of thinking like saying sorry less is a bad idea? Any of you willing to say that? Yeah. I had it a little bit that most people, when they say sorry, it's kind of like pretending they didn't mean to hurt you. Oh, I'm so sorry I called you an asshole. Right? Oh, I'm so sorry, that I was mean to you. It's like, no, you actually wanted them to hurt. If you're honest with yourself, you actually wanted them to feel pain and hurt because you were in pain and hurt. And it would be more truthful, more honest and real for me to be like, yeah, I did do that. To just be congruent and say I did do that. And not use the sorry to dispel the energy of what actually happened, and instead plug that energy into shifting yourself into somebody that doesn't hurt another individual. And so the sorry kind of lets you off the hook because you dissipated the energy by giving them the sorry versus channeling that into me to say, wow, I want to be the woman that isn't calling him an asshole. So first I have to admit that I did it, not, oh, I didn't mean to, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to hurt your feelings. I fucking meant to hurt his feelings. I was hurt. I was pissed off. Right? And so that's how I had it. But culturally speaking, that's a really wild-ass kind of idea. I mean, as good little boys and girls, the goody two-shoes archetype in all of us, we're supposed to be sorry for all sorts of things. And so this is where he gave up his preference for something that felt like it could be evolutionary for us to play this game. And the moment it isn't evolutionary and we go too far over and there is sorry that's needed, then we do that. It's not like there's never sorry in our relationship, but there's apology. So that's kind of an example of a using the context of your relating to give up on a preference in service to the context, which pulls you out of a pattern.
I want to take a little side road, but I think you guys, there's a little cafe down this side road. You're gonna love it. So, it turns out that the skill of repair, meaning like you're upset with me and I'm talking with you in a way where you feel like you're not upset anymore, I'll call that repair. The skill of repair and the skill of altering my behavior in the future to not cause a future upset are two different things. But we relate usually with our partners as though they're the same thing. Like if you didn't repair with me well, then I don't trust that you're going to change your behavior well. And what I've noticed observing people through the years is there tends to be an expertise in one or the other. The people who are really, really good at repair tend to fuck up more because they're really good at repair. So it's like the cost is lower. The people who are really, really bad at repair, like horrible at repair, tend to integrate more completely, more fully their mistakes. Not always. So I'm in favor of good repair, good integration. But to do that, you have to realize they're two different things versus thinking that the person's ability to kind of make it right with you in dialogue is going to somehow relate to their remembering to be different in the future. This is two totally different things. Just keep them separate. Yeah. So let's get them building some context. We have to give some examples.
Yeah, give some more examples.
All right. So our current context, Jennifer's and mine, is the evolution of consciousness, mind, and body, and that's our consciousness and yours, everyone's. So that is our context. And if we're going to make a choice about what party we're going to go to, what we eat for dinner, what we're going to wear, whether we do this talk or not at Burning Man, it's always like, well, what's going to raise the consciousness? And then we do that. Ours and oh wow, should we do the master cleanse or not? Well, which is going to raise the consciousness of mind and body? It's pretty clear. So we're doing the master cleanse. That kind of thing. That's our current context, which, by the way, happened because we noticed that our life was so extraordinary that this whole extraordinary life thing became really redundant, and it was no longer a thing to strive for. So it was no longer more important than our preferences. And I started to care about my preferences, and she started to care about her preferences, and we noticed a couple of fights that went like that, and we're like, wait a minute, we need a new context. Other ones that I've known, let's see, there's friends of ours who have the context of pure channel to the divine. So their context for their relationship is to establish a clear channel for each of them to the divine. And to the extent the relationship serves that clear channel, good. And if it doesn't, no, not happening. And they make their decisions that way.
We had one friend that had a full self-expression. So their relationships were about creating full self-expression in themselves and others. So that would be another example.
Our context is full self-expression. So we're going to do whatever expresses ourselves fully.
Can you see how this makes decision-making easy? Because then it's not about the preference. It's about, what would serve this thing? And then you're having a high-quality conversation about, what, you're afraid of this. Would it be, would you be transcending this fear of full self-expression to go to the party or wear the crazy hat or put on the tutu for Tutu Tuesday? Then you know what to do. Then you know how to decide. And then you're deciding towards something that's on the path of the human being you want to become. Right? And so that's why we call it evolutionary. So good. Let's throw a couple more.
Well, I'm just going to, before we do, imagine a couple of the rules that we were talking about earlier being broken. A situation where your lover doesn't like your family, or that you've hurt their feelings, or that they're having an emotion and you're not wanting to take responsibility for it. And imagine now addressing that with your partner in the context of clear channel to the divine. Well, and having that conversation. Well, in terms of my taking responsibility for your emotions, which is the setup that's going to have that clear channel to the divine? And now imagine it totally differently, resolving that through the context of greatest self-expression. I have my emotions, I want to express those. Well, I want to have my full self-expression, which I can't do if I'm taking accountability for yours. So you might actually come up with totally different solutions depending on which context you're using. So it's really important you have the same one, right?
Yeah, like if you chose harmony, right, as your context,
right,
then always kind of all of your emotions on your partner, you might actually look at self-regulating as a means of solving it. So you see how a different context changes the whole fabric of how you relate.
If you choose harmony, buy a book on NBC. That'll be helpful. Those are some contexts. You guys got an idea of what a context might be?
Yeah, you have questions? Go ahead.
How do you choose a context?
Good question. Because we're going to have you do it right now. So let's give him some instructions on how
it's got to be the thing that you care about more than getting fucked.
Okay, what if you don't? If the couple doesn't have the same context?
What if the couple doesn't have the same context? Is his question. It's a great question.
Yeah, if they're incompatible, it means that you're either going to compromise yourself or break up. If they're compatible and they're like, your context is evolution and their context is growth, you can like, okay, well, I can see how these are different syntax on the same life energy, right? Very similar.
Those knit together.
Yeah, exactly. Or, because Jennifer's context, her personal context, is slightly more planetary than mine, and mine is slightly more immediate community. I want the most powerful immediate community. She wants the most powerful planet. But when we have an immediate community who's committed to the planetary growth, then those totally work together. And so that's how we make those work. Does that make sense? So slight differences can work together. But if her context is harmony and my context is pushing boundaries, which it has been in the past. When I met Jennifer, I said, by the way,
that was his context,
my context for relating with all women is pushing boundaries. So if we're going to be relating, it's going to be around finding your boundaries and mine and pushing the hell out of them. So that's what's happening. And she said, great. You like to push edges. My playa name is Edgeless. I said, I love you. I'm going to be the most significant man you meet.
Yeah.
But, so does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions before we...
Before we do that, we kind of explain the exercise. Any other questions?
Good.
Okay. Oh, one back there.
Can you use it for friendships too?
You can. It makes for extraordinary friendships.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's possible to have friendships on other bases that are more casual, but if you have a close friendship or you have a context for the friendship, it's so juicy. It's so rewarding.
Yeah, when you're explicit about the values that you and a tribe of friends share, and then you can help each other grow through those values, call each other out on those values, help support each other, lift each other up on those values. That is part of what creates like a chosen family feeling community that really has you strive. This Camp Mystic that we're all at, we have that here. We have a set of kind of core values that bind us as a community, and as a result of that, we're close both on and off playa. We would die for each other practically. We love each other at that deep level. And it's more than just, it's the guy that I call up when I want to go out and party. It runs deeper. So I recommend talking about this with your tribe and see, like, what is their context for friendship? What does it even mean? We started to define something, if Stacy's, I don't think she's in here, but called lovership. Oh yeah, where we took friendship beyond, like, what would it mean if we as a tribe didn't just friend each other, but created a whole new word and had like lovership with each other. That doesn't just necessarily mean a sex free-for-all, although that could be fun. But it does mean like that, it didn't have to do with sex. It just meant that we would, like, what if we treated each other like we were actually lovers of each other in that deep sense.
The same regard, the same
regard that we would give to our partner, maybe not romantic, but the same regard. And so we explored that as a tribe, and that was an exquisite exploration. So I highly recommend that. So shall we have you do it, and then we'll have you share with us, and if you had any trouble or issue with it, we'll walk you through it.
So we're going to get into groups of 3.
Yeah.
And then we're just going to spend a few minutes, and each one of you want to start talking about what are some of the things that are really important to you? So important to you that if you got that thing, but your love relationship fell apart, you'd consider it a win. So what's something that if you got that thing, but your love relationship fell apart, your marriage fell apart, your boyfriend left you, or whatever happened, it's still a win.
Yeah. This is this answer to that question of what is the one thing that you want to bring to every single relationship you're in, that's like the thing that you're about, that you can't help but give. It's like that's your context for relating, and it's the thing that if you gave that full out, that's not a fail. You get an A for the relationship, even if the relationship didn't last. So you're going to get in groups of 3. We're going to give each person, 2 minutes?
Yeah, like 2 minutes, super brief.
And then allow the partners listening to help you crystallize it into like a word or 2, short. If your context for relating is a paragraph, that's not it. It should be a quality, an aspect, a value, a few words. Got it? Does that make sense?
There's one more question which I want to answer.
Oh, yeah, answer the question.
So if you are here with your partner and you want to spend the rest of the day fighting, then you can be in the same group with your partner. Or if you're certain that you have the same context, you could be in the same group. But I recommend doing this with the freedom, representing that value, to say things that might be challenging to your partner's ears as you discover the truth, which won't be challenging to their ears, because the truth is actually the reason they're with you already. So, but sometimes you have to get to the truth through this weird alleyway called things that would trigger them. So I would recommend not doing this with your partner yet.
Yeah. So go ahead, just find yourself in groups of 3, and then we'll give each of you 2 minutes. You're going to talk about what your context for relating is. Why are you in a relationship? What's the one thing you want to bring to every relationship?
Okay, if you've been speaking, if it's your turn, you got the longest hair, raise your hand if you've got at least a thing that's kind of in the zip code of a context that you might have for relating. Okay? Great, raise them high so I can see. Awesome. Raise your hand if you are totally frustrated and have no idea what we're talking about. Okay, that's nobody? Awesome. So if you're like approaching the zip code, it means that a further conversation is needed. And I really recommend having that conversation with people who love you and believe in you, and just kind of get reflections. It's not something you necessarily decide on today, but we want to give you the starter kit today that might refine itself over a few months, so that you can really know that you'll put your stake in the ground and enroll your partner. This, by the way, if you're single, this is awesome, because you can just approach people, say, this is my context. If you want to play that game, then you want to play with me. If you don't, then we're not a match. And it's so simple. It's just
hot too.
So easy. So wrap this up in the next 1 to 2 seconds. Just say the last sentence that you were going to say when I interrupted you, and then switch to the second person. And now wrap that up. And bring your attention back here. So if you have what you feel like is at least a really solid kernel for the DNA of a context for your relationship,
Raise your hand.
raise your hand. And isn't that liberating to know like what you care about so much? And so that you can make decisions from there instead of trying to please your partner or please you. Because honestly, what pleases your partner and what pleases you is some arbitrary percentage, like 50%, based on your limitation, pathology, and insecurity. So we don't want to perpetuate all that anyway. Some of the ways that you develop the things that please you are developed through avoidance patterns of ways that you felt unloved, which wasn't true. So We don't want to be pleased, actually. It just perpetuates. That's like getting off the evolutionary train and hanging out in the station. And if you want that, I don't think you end up at Burning Man, and you certainly don't end up at this talk.
So let's hear from a few of you courageous folks. Give us just the kernel of your context.
Wow, realization of unconditional love. I love it. All right, so I'm picturing myself. I'm there in the conversation. We're talking about apology, and I'm like, well, what would be the best way we could realize unconditional love? I think I'd still go with no apology there as a better way to just instead of requiring the apology, to realize the unconditional. Awesome, that's great.
Yeah, great. Let's hear another one.
World health, harmony, and joy.
World health, harmony, and joy.
Yeah. And I would probably say health, harmony, and joy, including for the world, so they can start with just
starts with the relationship, right?
Yeah. Just because it's not clear to me, world health, harmony, and joy, there would be some decisions that would be hard to make on that basis. But if you start with yourself, then it's easier. Yeah.
Let's hear from you. Yeah.
Understanding fundamental principles.
Understanding fundamental principles. Wow, that's pretty heady.
Your partner's going to be a thinker.
Yeah.
Clear head.
You see, now you're clear who you want, though.
That's right. I don't recommend marrying a dancer. Just.
It's going dark.
Yeah. And I'm teasing you a little bit, but we were talking. Someone earlier said something here, and we were talking about the idea of a value of sufficiency. Like certain values are infinite values because the more there is for everyone, the better it is for everyone. Like love. Let's just take that one. The more love there is, the more love there can be and should be, and it's better for everybody. There's no way to have so much love that some people are disadvantaged. But understanding, I find, to be a value of sufficiency, meaning once you get to a sufficient, it's like intelligence, once you get to a sufficient level of understanding or intelligence, then you get diminishing returns on greater level of understanding. You want to understand how does your car work, and then you understand it at the level of mechanics, and that might be sufficient. But then if you want to understand like how each component works and on the level of chemistry, and then on the level of quantum mechanics, I'm not sure you need to be a quantum physicist in order to be a race car driver. So there's this level of sufficiency, and understanding for me has that quality. So I might choose another word. What was the rest of it after understanding? Fundamental principles.
Yeah. The word I was, I guess, looking for is grok, if you're familiar.
Grok, yeah, grok.
Yeah.
Well, shit, you should just say grok on fundamental principles and make sure that that the person you're with also has read Heinlein, and you'll be good. Because if they're not, it's hard for me to imagine actually you guys together.
Do we have one or two more? Oh, yeah. All right. Do you have one or two more, just so that people can hear?
I'd like to hear a little bit about honesty, how that is when it's not honest, that breaks up the possibility of shared context.
So I want to hold that question because what I want right now is to hear people's contexts, their example context, and then we can go to that one.
Let me go to the question. Yeah. Oh, it's honesty?
Honesty is example context. Yeah, I also...
I like that.
Yeah,
like I think truth and honesty, right?
I think if you convert that to truth, you're going to get more mileage out of it. Because honesty is funny because you have the whole idea of like a top truth. Like if you just report on the garbage in your mind, you could label that being honesty, right? Like, oh, and now my mind is spitting out this garbage, and now it's spitting out this garbage, now it's spitting out, and that could all be honesty because it's actually happening, and I'm revealing it, I'm being transparent. But that's not exactly the same as the value of what's true. Like, so my mind is telling me that you're a bitch, but the deeper truth is that I'm afraid of your feminine power.
So does that sound good, truth?
So truth, I would say, more than honesty would work better. You'll just get farther. Honesty will be good for a while, and then it'll get old.
Yeah. Ariana?
Wanting my partner's happiness, I call it
happiness.
partner's happiness.
Yeah, I think that's a dangerous one.
Yeah.
Partner's happiness. Wanting the partner's happiness. Now, freedom. So she said, the context is wanting the partner's happiness above all else, and then she said, in the context of freedom. Now, freedom, like freedom for me, you, and everyone, that context feels like it'll sail to the end. Wanting your happiness, because what do you do on the day you're not happy? I've had the experience where I'm not happy, and I don't want to be happy, and I don't want you to help me being happy. Have you ever had that? Yeah. So if I'm having that experience, then our context just broke and we're no longer in relationship.
So like allowing the partner to be free to pursue their happiness instead of me placating.
That's better.
Totally.
So she reworded it, allowing my partner to be free to pursue his happiness or her happiness.
And I would
allowing
go,
each other to pursue our own happiness inside of the context of our relating. That our relating reinforces our ability to pursue our happiness is even better, because you don't want that sense of sacrifice where I'll give up my happiness because my context is about you. In these contexts, this is about how you relate, how you both relate together. So just make sure not to delete yourself outside of the context. Yeah.
Can I work with that one? I actually want to work on that one a little bit.
You want to work on it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because can I work with you a little bit on it? All right, it's a little hot, seedy. It's going to be a little challenging. Is that good? I know. Yeah, that's what I thought.
She's game. We know her.
So allowing your partner to pursue, or allowing your partner's freedom, is a little bit weird, because you don't grant your partner's freedom. Your partner's freedom is inherent to them. It's their birthright. It predates you. It predates their own birth. So allowing it is a little bit. It's like the illusion of control. You can't not allow it. You can only be upset about it or not. Right. So that's. I think there's probably a better verb. Like embodying freedom. Yeah, and when you probably could just say freedom. Like the context is that we're going to be free, and happiness. There may be times in life, like if we were partners, we couldn't be partnerships around pursuing happiness, because I don't pursue that. I pursue other things, contribution, some other stuff. Happiness comes along the ride.
Emergent. It's an emergent property for us that if you try to go after it directly, it's usually elusive. But if you go after, other things, that it ends up being the soup you're in. So
yeah, it's like money. It's really hard to make money. Anyone knows hard to make money? Hard to make money. It's really hard to make money. It's really easy though to provide value. And if you're providing value, then money happens automatically. Money's just, it's a non-issue. It just flows as much as you want.
For me, freedom really is the value, but I feel like when I say freedom, people think something else.
Got it.
she's saying freedom is the value. When she says freedom, people think something else. Good, keep going, yeah.
So freedom is actually the value. I'm aware of that. But when I speak or focus on I want your happiness as my focus and as my speaking,
Yeah.
it tends to translate to the other person.
Got it.
Oh, I'm free to be. You're okay.
Setting them free, yeah, it's like they're free to be.
Yeah, free to be and free to pursue, I'd say, what they would want to pursue.
Right, which is distinct from freedom as the value of like.
Freedom for freedom's sake.
Right.
Totally, I get it.
Yeah.
Freedom in
That's
service
great.
to happiness versus just freedom for a free-for-all. Yeah.
Which I think is the...
Or in service to fulfillment more than happiness.
Yeah.
Happiness is the emergent of like that you're pursuing.
Yes.
So now we're getting somewhere, Ariana. I like
Totally.
freedom to pursue fulfillment. That the context of our relating is to create freedom to pursue fulfillment for me, for you, for all beings. Like, this is juicy.
Versus freedom for freedom's sake, which I think is the only reason you and I aren't dating, right? Just because of that difference. Let's go. One was,
Wait. I had pointed at her earlier.
She had pointed to her earlier than you.
In the blue, yeah.
Personal growth relating to empowerment.
It's empowerment, right?
Yeah.
So the brand of personal growth, it has empowerment on it, right? Yeah.
And if you have empowerment for you, for the other person, and for others, like if then that's going to last you a very long time. That's
Yeah.
that context.
Yeah, love it.
I think
She's saying self-love and service, and wondering if they're a little at odds.
Yeah, she was acknowledging the apparent paradox there, which is actually when they appear like freedom and devotion, when they appear like they're in conflict, that's fruit for the best discovery, because it requires the most creativity, which has you aligned with your higher self, creativity being...
Yeah, what's the universe where those aren't at odds anymore, where you pop outside the
Yeah,
paradox?
totally.
Right? Yeah, I like that.
And she said it in this amazing accent, which I can't reproduce, but if you were near, you just got to treat it. So
Yeah. Great. All right, one more. Julia?
we were talking about a context about full creative expression.
full creative expression.
Full creative expression. So everything in service to that is your big hell yes from both of you.
Yeah.
And do you share that? Yeah. So that's going to be a juicy relationship right there.
That's it is.
I mean, this is how you know. This is what we're getting at here, is that when you reveal your individual context to your partners and they light up and their body goes, yeah, I want to play that game. That's the one to pursue. And if they go, ooh, can't we do it this other way? Then that's a fun night.
So, imagine that's your context. You get agreement with your partner. If you're single, you meet someone and you say that's their context, which, by the way, is an awesome invitation. It's probably going to inspire them already to a higher way of thinking about themselves and their dating. You're pretty early on, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months into your relationship, if it hasn't happened already, you're going to get an experience where you're going to say, shit, if I really vote for this value, if I'm really going to do self-love and service, it means I have to do this thing, which I think I'm going to lose you if I do it. Like, if I say this to you, I think you're going to leave me. And we had one of these really early on, and I was just so terrified that I was going to lose Jennifer. But I said, you know what? Keeping Jennifer in the context of selling out on this value isn't a life I can live. So I'm going to go ahead and lose Jennifer now. Fuck, I hate this. And that conversation turned into the most transformative experience of my life, because it was essentially me having a complaint, and then and I expressed my complaint. She showed me how it was my limitation that was generating the complaint, which I'd never had seen in my entire life. And it was then therefore an invitation to let go of that limitation and just be greater. I would never have had that opportunity in the past, because every bone in my body said, Bryan, sell this shit out and just hang with her. She's awesome. So, don't say the thing that you think is going to threaten the relationship.
Tell us what that was.
I'm not remembering exactly, but it was something around. I remember. It was something I'd asked for that she was doing. So we're early on dating. This is going to be a little story about the empty chair of masculine pressure.
Yes.
Is it okay to tell it?
Yes.
So I noticed that she was in tears over something her boss had said, and it was like really intense. And there was a couple of weeks where she was really in pain over the sort of male boss playing a perpetrator role. And then she resolved it with her boss, and it was awesome. And that same week, she was in tears over something her dad said. And this male perpetrator of her dad was having that routine.
I had a roving perpetrator in my life that I felt like I think I was naked if I didn't have somebody playing the role of the perpetrator. And it would rove from father to lover to boss, men in positions of power, basically.
So I'm like, hey, I'm noticing that you're handing this card out. It's almost like a loaner. Hey, will you be my perpetrator and make me really upset and make me cry? And like, I'm a victim and you're doing this horrible thing. And then when we resolve it, I'm going to hand it to someone else. And I said, hand that to me. And cast me as your perpetrator, because I'm going to love you through this and get you out of this context. Basically, disbelieve the role. I'm not your perpetrator. So since that's not true, if you hand the card to me and pretend I am, and then we can resolve this pattern forever. Not just for you, but for everyone. And so she did. And a month or two later, we found that I had asked her to come work with me, and she was starting to work with me. She left her job as the president of an environmental chemical company, and she's now working for me in my business doing transformation for people. And she was miserable in her work, and all her spark had left, and she used to be saving the planet through removing VOCs from the air, through products, through working on a cancer drug. Yeah, exactly. And now she was just like passing out handouts at a transformational workshop in a hotel, and all her spark was gone, and it was my fault.
He was a great perpetrator in that moment. You ruined my life!
You ruined my life. I'm like,
I was saving the world. Now I'm handing out pamphlets.
I said, shit, I did ruin
Damn you!
And it was very real. We can be jovial about it now, but it was real at the time. It was not like hardy har perpetrator. This was serious, and I just got so frustrated with like being in that role and feeling like it was too constrictive for me, and that I wasn't really a perpetrator. And I kind of said, damn it, stop calling me the perpetrator. And the realization I had was that when I had invited Jennifer to work with me, most of my attention was on what I would get out of that, and I didn't really create a context where she could thrive with all of her gifts in our work together. I more created like how much the work would improve by her contribution
How
to
can
it.
I fit into his creating his world?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, how, well, you're this amazing missing piece to my world. Come be in it. And that was like the last remnant of my misogyny, which it was invisible to me. The woman fits into the man's world. I had no idea I was operating from that context. I would have sworn I wasn't. But that, my frustration with her passing me as the perpetrator, which I asked for, was the way I got to see the other side of that particular veil, and then step out of that final step of misogyny and really play the role I now play of truly support of the divine feminine and all her representatives. So I have a piece of trivia for you, and then we're going to wrap up and do maybe one or two questions. Do you guys, are you familiar with this piece of work here, about this painting here?
The androids. How many of you are familiar with it?
How many of you are familiar with it? It's called
Oh, wow.
Union. And if you don't know already, this is actually Android's Jones' depiction of our evolutionary partnership, which he did at our wedding. And so this was a depiction of our union that he did as a amazing gift for us.
He live painted it at part of our wedding, learning our faces and doing it over and over. He's an exquisite artist. If you haven't checked out Android Jones, you really should. And this is just an epic piece of art that we are both honored to be representatives of, an iconic just love. It's just about masculine, feminine coming together in union, freedom and devotion expressed in these two characters here that happen to be our likeness, but just an homage to Android. And we thought giving this talk in front of this painting would be very apropos.
And it depicts for me, it's like the thing you can't say but you can only feel about what the possibility of evolutionary partnership is. You know, take your contexts. That's kind of like the gold light between you in the painting. Take that context and just surrender fully to it. Surrender your whole lives to it. Surrender your partnership to it. Surrender everything to it, and then you'll also be in an epic evolutionary partnership, which we will learn from and connect with.
Do we have time for questions?
Yeah, if there are questions, we can take a few now.
We can take a few now, yeah, if there are
Thank you.
any. We're in the last few minutes before our next talk, so. Michelle?
Isn't the context itself relative, and how do you resolve, oh, that's not honesty, it's your honesty today, or it's not your grandness or evolution, it's your personal evolution, or your selfishness?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. This is an awesome question.
Repeat it, though, repeat it.
Isn't the context relevant or relative? And then how do you resolve the fact that you might feel differently on different days about different contexts, or that it might be phases, or, you know, it's because there's a lack of permanence to it. Yeah, yes. My experience so far is that every context is temporary. And I try to pick ones that are compelling enough that I know they're going to last me like more than a year. This is why I said this will last you longer, this will last you longer. Like a really refined one can, but I haven't thought of a single context that won't terminate at some point. It won't become redundant at some point. And I think, you know, when you interview, which I have, people who have been in relationships for many, many decades, successful relationships, because they're happy, they're thriving, and they've been together for decades. Almost all of them, when you ask them the question, what's the key to a successful relationship, will list among them the ability to let your current context die and to create a new one while staying in relationship. And it's the most unpleasant, scary, difficult thing I've ever done is to do that with Jennifer, because it feels like you're dying. It feels like everything you know is going to end and you have no way of relating.
Yeah, those versions of us broke up when
Exactly.
we changed our context.
Yeah,
Then we created a new one,
A new
and
one.
every context has a life cycle. And so you'd have to be standing still for that not to occur. So even as beautiful as all the context you all shared, trust me, if you really play this full out,
They'll expire because you'll
they will
manifest
expire.
them.
Yeah. They will become so redundant that it's not worth having that be your context, because it just falls into that isness. Like our freedom and devotion is in that place where it just is for us. So we don't need that as a context.
And it's possible that when your context is expired and you create a new one, that you won't have the same one again. In which case you won't be together.
So isn't the context, the universal context, belief in relationship?
is the universal context belief in relationship.
For you to shift context, you mean that you want that relationship to survive?
I would say the universal context is more like surrender to your role in evolution, which may or may. I'm not sure what.
Maybe with one person or not.
Yeah.
For that journey.
Yeah. I'm not clear that relationship itself is the highest value. It seems to be the best tool I've ever seen, but it's a tool, not a value to me. There was someone back here.
Question.
Oh, okay, right here first, and then.
Oh. Raise your hand again.
Yeah,
Oh.
right here.
All right, go ahead. Yes, you are. That's who I pointed at.
Yeah.
All right. We were confused.
We're in
Go ahead.
violent agreement.
Yeah.
No, you. No, you. No, you. No, you.
Me, myself, and I.
Yes, all three of you.
Right, all three of you, start now.
Let's say if you have a context, and it's an agreement between both people to try to honor that context. And suppose, one person, does an action in such a way that kind of breaks or violates that trust or in the context,
Yes.
or breaks the context. How do you deal with,
It's inevitable, by the way. You will do it 100 times a day at first.
You put them in context prison. Punish them.
That's doghouse.
$200, cat pass go, the whole 9 yards. Doghouse, they call it.
So how do you treat, dealing with, how do you ask for amends? And what do you do if the person doesn't want to make the amends that you ask for?
So what context are you working with?
Let's make it real for you.
Because amends would not necessarily fit into our context.
Okay, so being treated in a disrespectful way.
Is the context?
Yes.
Context respect.
That's going to be an intense relationship.
Respect, yes.
So the context of relating is respecting
Respect.
you, each other, all life,
Yeah.
and there's disrespect that happens.
Yes, exactly.
Got it. And so what do you do when you violated your own context of relating? So that's a great question. Yeah.
Well, first of all, I just have to tell you my intuition says that you're choosing respect as a context to fix a wound. To fix a place where you felt disrespected and where you disrespect yourself. So I don't know. I'm not saying that's true. I'm saying that's what my brain told me to say right now. And so I said, "Yeah, okay, I'll say that." Because it's like if our context is to build the most extraordinary camp we can, then I don't have to check on working hard as a value. Everybody's working hard because we're doing this thing, which is hard to do. If we are in love and creating growth together, then respect is that's like ground floor. You know what I mean? It's not the thing we're trying to get to. It's kind of where we start.
Yeah.
And so I would do some work on where are the places that I felt disrespected, where a part of me still agrees with the person that disrespected me. And then see if there's another context, once respect, let's say that respect was handled for you, and everywhere you went, you got all the respect you could want. You never felt disrespected, just you were a magnet for respect. Then what would you want to do as this respected person? And then I would pick that as the context, and then respect will emerge for you on the path. Which I know isn't the answer to your question, but it's just what came up for me.
What do you get when what happens for you when somebody respects you? What is the thing that's underneath?
Okay, so maybe to be more accurate, the context is actually more love and being honored.
Being honored,
So,
love and being honored.
Love and being honored. And then what occurred was disrespect. And so then I guess it brought up the baseline of respect,
Yeah.
Was this person, was it a man or a woman?
A man.
Did this man also overtly or explicitly have the context of love and being honored? Was that also their context?
No. Never
well,
played that game.
Yeah, well, people
Well, that's the first
generally
part.
operate on their own
Okay.
context. So
All right.
if they're not playing that game, then you're never going to get the amends you're looking for. Because if I'm driving south and you're saying, why didn't you go west? And I need you to go west, I'm just going to keep driving south on my train. So understanding what they're up to and being up to the same thing is a prerequisite for being able to decision make together based on the context.
Yeah, I think probably what was telling for me was when I invited him to play the love and honor game, he suggested it was going to be challenging. So,
When she said I invited him to play the love and honor game, he said it's going to be challenging, which in certain cultures mean I'm not going to do that.
okay. So then the subsequent action is in alignment with, I guess.
Yeah.
With this.
And I might say okay, what game sounds fun to you, and then see if you like that one.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, if you use these contexts to weaponize, and say, oh, well, you didn't get your gold star and you didn't give me perfect love and honoring. It's kind of not the point. The point is not that every day you are love and honoring. The point is that you're on an evolutionary path towards every day moving in the direction of more love and honor, right? And so when there are little, turns along the path, then the conversation is, oh, how do we get back on the path of love and honoring? Because that's the context we're both on. And so then it's just a look at how do we get back on, not make amends for having gone off the path. You, in your own context, even if you think you'll be perfect, you won't. I mean, if you choose, most of these contexts are lofty, they're big. I mean, these ideas that you guys gave us in here, I mean, these are beautiful. If you lived these all the way 100% full out, you'd probably like pop off the planet and ascended, become an ascended being. Right? So just expect that you're going to fail, expect that he's going to fail, but expect that you're on the same trajectory and that you can each have the conversation about getting back on that trajectory. And that's how I would handle it, in as loving a way as you can. I would handle it in a way that loved and honored him. So I would bring it up in the context of love and honoring, because the worst way to bring this up is to stop your love and honoring by telling him he's not doing love and honoring. Right? So now neither of you are doing it. And so you become the example. And then he won't be able to help following suit in that moment. It's really hard for somebody to be love and honoring you and you to be an asshole. Right? You're gonna start to bring that. We get in rapport. We're tribal creatures. We like to copy each other. We like to be in rapport with each other. So you can help bring him back into that. And he can help bring you back into that. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Evolution, I sometimes think of evolution as like a relay race for ants from here to the moon. And it's really hard for me, like if you imagine this little relay race for ants, it's really hard to get down on a particular ant for not going like another inch or something. It's like we're all on the path. It's so much bigger than us. It's unimaginably bigger than us. Then all we can do is stay awake and put our foot in front of the other and do our part and be conscious and make our choices the best we can. And so when someone falters or dishonors us or doesn't keep their agreement or acts outside of the context they said that we wanted to do, compassion and forgiveness is usually best. Okay.
I think we're
I think this is it. So thank you very much. You guys.
This is so much fun, you guys. Thank you. We love this topic. You're wonderful.